following is a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production.
Stopped.
Thank you, Telly Olson. We are back. Bronx Roots in the Zone. I'm Ralph Tyko with the Comfortably Zoned Radio Network, and half the tandem is here. David Hubler, waiting for Michael Preminger. How about that? David, how are you?
I'm good, and you?
It only took me 2 takes.
Oh, well, that's pretty good. That's not a problem.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's going on, Michael? We're waiting. David, we're waiting for Michael.
Yes.
No, we could do 3 takes on that, but
no,
we'll be okay.
Yeah, Michael will be along shortly, I assume. So, what's new? Not a great deal around here.
Yeah, what would you like to talk about today?
I saw an interesting article recently about children's games, and I was thinking, city kids. It doesn't have to be New York, but city kids over the years have adapted to their own sort of list of games that they play, and I think a lot of that has been lost in suburbia, where all the children's activities are organized by and run by the adults. I thought of this when I was walking my dog the other day, and we go through the park, and they've redone a little league field, and it's lovely now. I mean, it's got a beautiful electric scoreboard and all sorts of batting cages and stuff, and it's named after Pudge Rodriguez, the tremendous catcher who had a long career. In fact, he was there for the opening of this. It's part of what the Washington Nationals do to try to encourage baseball in the area. They've done this in several other fields as well. This one was named for Pudge. But the point was, I was thinking, we never had Little League was something that we knew of but didn't have. The Police Athletic League in New York City was sort of the if you remember that, I'm sure you do. They ran a lot of programs for kids, but it wasn't the same thing as having all these dads come out and coach. And you look in the papers, and every once in a while there's this dad who's gone ballistic. I thought at one point that parents should not even be at the kids' games. Let the kids just play, and it would be so much better. I've known a few parents who have done that as coaches. They make sure every kid gets in the game, and which annoys a number of parents because the poorer players get in and sometimes play as much as the better players. And this riles up a number of the dads especially who think that, well, that's just throwing the game away. But but when we were kids, parents didn't even know the games we were playing. Not that there was anything wrong with the games themselves, but we just went out on the street or to the schoolyard, and we played games, and we had seasons. Like right now, we'd be in the middle of a football season, which is sort of natural, and we had on toward the very end, the northern end of the Grand Concourse, there were a couple of dividers on the road, and one of them was a strip of grass and some pine trees growing up right. And in fact, it was right in front of Clinton High School, and it was big, and we used to call that Pine Island. And for the football season, we went over there to Pine Island and played, pickup football. We just said, go
on the grass.
On the grass, right? Sure.
Was it tackle football?
No. Yeah, it was touch football. Depending on how many players we had, nobody really got hurt. We didn't play flag football either. We played touch, but it was like two-hand touch, which is a little harder than one-hand touch. A little more difficult to do. But the games themselves were played and run by the kids. There were no parents in sight. And I was wondering, did you have the same thing in Queens? It's miles away from the Bronx. People don't realize how the distance between the various boroughs, and it's not like some other cities where you can literally bike from one part of town to the other. But did you do the same thing in Queens?
Absolutely. We had very little parental stuff going on compared to what it is today. They have all kinds of traveling leagues, and where you buy equipment, and you go in caravans to games and what have you, making sports for the very rich. That's
not necessarily the very rich, but certainly. My point was that the parental involvement is something that we never had.
I didn't mean sports itself. I meant the competitive little league. Youth sports, where you almost breed your kid to be an athlete from a very young age. A lot of kids are forced into it. They're not having fun, and they're just pawns of the parents. Let me tell you something. George Case, who combined with you on your book, and whose dad was a big league ball player and a successful big league ball player, and he's George Case Jr., his dad, takes his kid to a little league game, and he's watching George III, who's like 8 years old. George tells this story about one of the parents standing up and saying and booing George and saying, "You'll never be half the player your dad was." At age 8, the kid is.
Yeah.
So his father just knew how to handle it and explained to him that he doesn't care if you're ever like I was. This is fun for you and just enjoy it. But it was
he handled it. Yeah, he handled it very well, according to George III. Yeah, I've always admired that story because it tells a lot about his dad as a human being. It
also tells an awful lot, and this is years ago, too. It also tells about the mindset of the parents who go to a little league game and boo a kid.
Yeah.
Just because he happens to be the son of a then famous athlete or this, that, and the other thing. And he wasn't even that famous. It's not like Mickey Mantle's kid or Yogi Berra's kids and what have you. It just sickened me to the idea of parental mindset.
And of course, George has remembered that story so well because he got a lesson from it that it's hard.
It transcends sports. It transcends sport.
Right. It's hard and it's particularly hard for the kids who are not good players. There's a dichotomy here between the coaches who want to make sure that all the kids play. And that's great on one hand. But the kids who really can't play the game but are on the team or the poorest players on the team, it's a real struggle for them to be in there because they will, fear making a mistake that will cost the team the game. And they know they're not really all that good. But we started out talking about the games that we played in the street, and
like box baseball. How
like,
many people out there have never heard the expression box baseball?
Right.
On the cracks of the sidewalk.
The reason I sort of started that because the other night I was watching a documentary. It was a two-part. It was Ken Burns' thing on Jackie Robinson, and there were shots there of, let's see what he came up in 47. So 37. It might have been the late 30s. There were shots of the kids on the street in New York, downtown, Lower East Side, I guess it was. And they were playing the same games that we played, like in the 50s and the late 50s, the same street games. One of which I remember very distinctly, which required usually a park setting. Do you remember Johnny on the Pony?
Yes, I do. Kids would pile on each other and they'd all.
Yeah.
The last kid on was always the biggest kid. It seemed.
For those who might a quick explanation. It's a game of two teams. One team is the pony, and the other team are the riders that attempt by piling on the pony team. The head guy stands against a tree, and 3 or 4 of his teammates lock arms, but on a crouch position, bent over position. So, and they lock arms, and then the other team starts to one at a time runs and jumps on the pony team. The idea is to knock the pony apart and down. And for the life of me, there was no reward at all. You just became, when you did it, you became the pony, which is, always thought was the poorer part of. I mean, I'd rather run and try to jump on than have somebody running and jumping on my back. But that was.
Yeah, and if you do really well, you get to be on the bottom.
Right.
That and make very much sense.
No, when you're 12 years old and that sort of thing. But that was probably, as far as I can recall, that was probably the most violent, if you want to use the word violent, game that we played. Because most of the games were quite harmless, considering that there was a game played across in the street called 3 Steps to Germany. Do you remember that one?
No, I don't.
Oh, you didn't play that. Well, that was a post-war game in which there was one guard and the players on one side of the street tried to get across the street. There might be 2 or 3 guards, and you had to try to get across the street without him catching you. And you could take 3 steps at a time by asking permission. May I take, 3 steps? It was a crazy game, post-war kind of game. But
Mother, may I? Was that one of the expressions?
That would be yes, same thing. Same kind. The concept was the same. You had to get permission, but you still had to try to get across by subterfuge or whatever you wanted to call it. There were all sorts of different kind of steps, but that was a product of the war.
We had King of the Hill, which was pretty much the same as Johnny on the Pony, as I recall. It's I don't know. Remember if there was an actual hill or I don't remember how the technicalities of the game. I know we didn't keep score officially, so there's nothing in any record book we can go back to and refer to. But I guess it was one guy who's ever the king of the hill has to fight off the other other kids for the position or whatever. But that's one. I remember the name more than I do how it worked. But I remember the big kid always got to win.
Well, sure. That's always the game. That's always the outcome, isn't it? The big guys get the But so
New York is.
Yeah.
I was just going to say that New York is an inner city game. Inner city, obviously, the games were played based on space, allotted schoolyard space, this, that, and the other thing. When did you first discover playing basketball? Was that all of a sudden kids going out?
That's a good question, Ralph. That's a very good question. I can't think of when we first started, but I distinctly remember the importance we attached to playing. This was something everyone did, and I've told you my last recollection of seeing Calvin Klein under the basket waiting for his team him to come in and play. And little did we all know, he can buy the schoolyard now 1,000 times over.
And the other one also, there was another fashion. I keep forgetting his name.
Ralph Lauren.
Yeah. It shouldn't be difficult for me to remember Ralph.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, that's true. But basketball was the game we played predominantly, and that was, of course, a schoolyard game because you needed baskets, and all the schools were outfitted with metal backboards and rims. Sometimes they even put up nets. In some
Sometimes
cases,
they were
chains.
metal nets too.
Chains. Yeah, they were chains.
Chains, as opposed to the web nettings, the rope. Yeah,
the rope. The rope kind of netting. Yeah. But we played that constantly. We played every Saturday. In fact, I think I've told that story about a guy I knew who, in his neighborhood in the Bronx, you had to sign up the night before if you wanted to make one of the two. There are three players per team. So if you wanted to be on a team that got an early start, you would write your name on the ground, on the concrete, with chalk or something. When you were coming home late from a date, so that you would be in the morning. You were reserving your spot, so to speak, so you wouldn't have to wait too long.
Gamesmanship.
And then we did that sometimes after school, depending. It was more likely the basketball games were reserved. Basketball was reserved for indoors in the winter in one of the school gyms that opened it up to the kids, and also the playing Saturdays and Sundays in the schoolyard. And Mike and I have a mutual friend, and this is one of these weird coincidence stories that I get such an thrill out of, because they tell such a unique story. Mike and we have this mutual friend, and I guess Mike was either on his way to coming down to play, because Mike usually came a little later than everybody else, as we can tell today. But he had further. He had further to go to walk over to the schoolyard. But anyway, I distinctly remember I was playing with this mutual friend. There were a couple of other guys, of course, on the court, and we were talking as we were playing, and we both acknowledged that we were both going off to Europe for the summer, bumming around Europe. And I asked his friend Herb, I said, well, when are you going? He said, I'm leaving tomorrow. I said, well, I'm gonna. My plane leaves whatever, a week later or 2 weeks later. I forget what it is. And he was going by ship, which sounded really exotic to me. But anyway, the point was, as we were playing, we said, yeah, we agreed. All right, we'll meet. We'll meet in Europe. Okay, this was the end of the conversation. We'll meet in Europe. And damn if we didn't.
Really? Accidentally, without setting it up or anything?
No, not anything like that. I had gone with a friend of mine, and I forget who Herb went with, but anyway, we walked around the corner, my friend and I, and there's Herb and a couple of guys standing there waiting to go into this restaurant. I think they were. I mean, in the middle of Madrid. Not that Madrid is the focal point, because it could have happened anywhere, but the fact that it even happened,
right,
it's just absolutely astounding to me.
How did you come across each other? Just out of curiosity.
So we walked around the corner, and there he was.
Wow.
I mean, think about that. Yes.
Wonder where he is today.
Who? The other friend, the mutual friend? He lives over here in Gaithersburg. We see him periodically. We have dinner with him and his wife.
Wow.
But see, that was another thing that I thought, and I've got a couple of instances that prove it to me. City kids growing up, because maybe it was the closeness, the apartment kind of life. City kids stick together. They have become friends for life. I know Alan Dershowitz, the famous attorney. He and his friends from Brooklyn, they take a long weekend, almost every year, and they go off somewhere as like a little reunion. But it's the same kids. Well, they're older than we are, but it's just the same group that played together and went to school together, a millennium ago in Brooklyn. And we have the same thing with our friends. Now, when I used to jog regularly, I jogged with two guys who were government workers, and they lived in our area. And one was from New Hampshire and one was from West Virginia. And they had no contact, both of them had no contact whatsoever with any of the kids that they grew up with. Not one.
Right.
And I think that was because they grew up in not even a suburban area, but more like a rural area. Although Nashua, New Hampshire isn't really rural. But if you lived, in private houses and had a little more privacy, and it's not the same thing as growing up in a city apartment building. And I don't care if it's Chicago or wherever the apartment buildings are. But I think that has a great deal to do with creating lasting friendships, because in effect you all live in the same building for the most part.
Well, it shows you how important it is. What's the thing? Breeding or breeding? That kind of thing.
Inbreeding, no.
Not inbreeding so much.
No.
But the importance of your natural environment, or your to how you're raised. Like you could take twins and put them, separate them, and put them in different environments, and it just goes to show you how important. Maybe it is because there are so many kids around, and we had apartments and this and that. But you don't forget the kids you grow up with.
No.
What we live in now, on Facebook, I've got 4 friends maybe, whose bar mitzvahs I attended, and who attended my bar mitzvah, on Facebook. Now, I wonder how it must have been for our parents and aunts and uncles and what have you, different generations, who, for no fault of their own, and you're talking the war years, to losing contact completely with folks, no way to regain it. What happened to this guy, that guy? Didn't have the internet. You couldn't go to Facebook. You couldn't go to Twitter and see who's around. That had
no.
Very frustrating. This is a first generation of that we have going. I have on Facebook. I have a camp reunion, my summer camp, and my neighborhood reunion, and of course what we do at Comfortably Zoned and what have you. It just makes communication for a lifetime so much easier than it was.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's I've always this is something that's always sort of been a big question mark in my mind. These two guys, I mean, they grew up well apart from each other. One in, as I said, one in New Hampshire and one in West Virginia, and it struck me as so odd that they both admitted it several times as we would jog along and talk, and that the kids they grew up with, they don't know where they are. They don't have any, contact with any of these. Now, I mean, my group, we still stay in touch with one another, fairly regularly through email, of course, which, as you point out, Ralph, we didn't have now, one close friend who grew up in my building, he and his wife have moved to Ecuador. Why Ecuador? Because it's has a great climate where they are. But the point is that we're still in touch, and we've been in touch, all these years. And it doesn't matter that they're in Ecuador. We still stay in touch,
that it's interesting that they move for the climate. I talk about this all the time. I think our society is really going downhill. Not to throw scares at anybody, but we're in a position now where it just looks like the president is going to ignore the Constitution, which means that he could do that when it comes to the next election. He could just say, too many problems, going to call it off, this, that, and the other thing, and establish a monarchy. Well, where does one move if they're totally dissatisfied and totally either afraid or disgusted by what's going on, and they really want to move? Where does one move? You can't get into Canada automatically, and Canada is freezing like hell.
Well, not all of it. Yeah, Canada's the place. Canada is the place. Because if you recall, during the Vietnam era, a lot of draft dodgers, just to use a general term, moved to Canada. Mm-hmm. In fact, this friend of mine, here's another link in the chain. The friend of mine who moved to Ecuador previously lived in North Carolina for a good many years in the Research Triangle area, Durham area, and there he ran into another young man who grew up in our same apartment building, and he was a year or two older than us. And so we didn't have all that contact. One of the things about growing up in the post-war era was that there were so many children born, especially like in the city areas, where you could have a whole bunch of friends, all of whom were born the same year, within 3 or 4 months of each other, let's say.
Exactly.
Whereas the kids who were a little older or a little younger, totally different group. You didn't play with those guys. The older guys played them by themselves, and the younger guys play. That doesn't sound right, played by
well,
themselves.
they're still
I
doing
should
it.
say.
Some things never change, and sometimes
Yeah, I should
it's
say
the
by
older
them.
guys playing themselves.
Yeah. But there was enough kids. So the point was, my point I was trying to make was that this fellow who was living in North Carolina, he had moved to Canada during the Vietnam era. He just wasn't going to have anything to do with it. And he moved to Canada. Now, you say that it's harder to get into Canada today. I don't know what the regulations are. We were up in Niagara Falls, the Canadian side, last September, so it's about a year and 2 months.
Well, it's. I don't mean it's harder to visit. You could probably get in on a quick visit, but it's hard to get in if you want to emigrate to that country.
I guess. Yeah.
And get a job or become a citizen eventually. They've put a lot of restrictions on since the Vietnam thing, and that would be just one country to consider. There's no place like home.
Yeah.
I wonder what the person in Ecuador, what the social situation, your friend,
well, there's
restaurants
are there what?
that remind.
I don't know. I haven't spoken to them in a bit, but they live. There's an expat colony up there in a town called Cuenca, which they had been to before, and allegedly it's really a terrific town. The climate is temperate all year round, and there are a lot of amenities. In fact, I was going to ask them about that the next time we exchanged emails. But they were there previously just to visit, and so they knew what they were getting into. Now, apparently, the plans are to stay at least 1 year, and then see. So I don't know what the Ecuadorian government requires to become a permanent, resident.
I wonder what the work situation is.
Well, they're not going to go to work. I mean, they're older.
Yeah, I'm assuming this guy is.
He's
age.
retired.
My
right.
Age too. Retired.
Yeah.
Very interesting. And the language, I guess Ecuador, you speak Spanish.
Of course.
Yeah.
Como no? Yeah. So, but anyway, I mean, the point I was trying to make was that.
And sorry, lady, I know that one too. That may not be Spanish, but that's universal. Just they know. Sorry. That's all right, senor. I'm a silly guy today. What other games did you play as a kid?
Of course. Now, I was going to get in. Of course, the universal game was stickball. Everybody played stickball. In fact, we talked about the different age groups having their own. I can recall that for a while there, the older guys, the guys who were maybe a year or two older than my cohort, they had arranged a father-son stickball game for every Sunday morning out there on the street.
Oh.
And
wow, that's pretty cool.
It was.
I only remember one parent coming down to watch us play stickball, and that was Stan Weiss's dad. He would hang with the kids a little bit and play stickball. Most of our parents were working folks, and they considered the schoolyard off limits.
Oh, well, this was in the street. This wasn't even in the schoolyard. You could play it along the street, where one sewer was home plate and a distant sewer was second base, and you made first and third were like where parked cars were. So you knew, it was a narrow.
The kids who could hit it with power, you judge it by sewers.
Right, exactly. A three-sewer hitter.
A three-sewer home run. Or
right, that's right. That was the unit of measurement on the street, the number of sewers you could hit by. And of course, you had to hit it straight because you're only on a street and there were parked cars there. So you had to hit it pretty straight. And of course, you used it. You know what always surprised me though? I don't know if it happened in Queens. You talk about the difference in climate and temperament and the society. The biggest fear that we had in playing stickball was that the cops would come by and confiscate the stick. And now you think, I could understand them coming by and confiscating guns and knives, but they were confiscating broomsticks because. And what would happen is the team that was at bat and the other players too would always be looking out for the patrol car that might be coming down the street and they yell, "Chicky, the cops!" And whoever was at bat would throw the bat under a car close by, and then we'd start to play punch ball. Where you just hit the ball out of your other hand with a fist, so the cops wouldn't know what you were doing. Now, think about that. Why in the world? First of all, we lived in the 52nd precinct, which at that time in New York was the quietest precinct in the city. So taking away kids' sticks was probably considered a high crime and misdemeanor or something like that.
They have nothing to do. Cops
had nothing to do. Right. Exactly. But and then of course they didn't have to, try to become our pals as a way of teaching kids, to that the cops were not bad people, as they sometimes have to do these days. But the point was, this was in many cases this was your mother's broomstick that you borrowed, left the broom behind in the house.
Right, you unscrewed it from
the
broom.
Right, exactly.
Remember that.
Yes, yeah. And then if you lost the broomstick, oh God, you have to go out and buy a whole new broom.
Right.
But why they did this was just, I've never been able to fathom that. And of course, I don't think any kids, maybe they do, still play stickball in the street in the city. I don't know. I hope they do. I would hope that tradition continues.
Maybe one kid got hit by a stick back in the 30s.
Yeah, something like that. But there used to be pictures in the paper of Willie Mays playing stickball out in the street.
Iconic picture of him.
Yeah, sure.
2 or 3 blocks from the Polo Grounds.
Yeah, that's right. Absolutely.
St. Nicholas Avenue, as a matter of fact. That was.
Oh, there you go. Very good.
And there's also a video of that, the famous picture. Somebody took a movie. It doesn't have sound, but that's on YouTube. You can catch.
Oh, like a home movie.
Yeah. Like a home movie. And I just wanted to say, when you mentioned stickball and we talked about the schoolyard in the same sentence, or the park where kids get together, there's also a video that goes with the song "Me and Julio Down by the Schoolyard," and it's with Paul Simon. And it's got, look for this. You'll be thoroughly entertained, and if for no other reason, he's got Mickey Mantle. He's throwing a pitch, a stickball. Mickey with the stick, and standing behind a handball court, which we used to use as when you throw the ball, we paint the.
That's
the
right, a
zone.
box. The
box.
Zone. Yeah, that's
exactly.
right.
And this video has Mickey Mantle, Paul Simon throwing what they called back then a Spalding.
A Spalding, right. Mm-hmm.
Right.
Exactly.
They didn't
nice
put the
pink.
G on it.
No, it was Spalding, was the original name.
Right.
But it was made by the Spalding Company. But in New York, it was a Spalding. D-E-E-N.
Yep.
Yes, Right. I have one.
Spalding.
I have one upstairs in my closet that I've kept all these years because I don't know if they
I
make
have
them
one
anymore.
too. The Spalding, they used to have a stamp on it, and that's kind of worn off. But
yeah, I know what you mean. But that was the best ball. That was a. You know, I remember I cut open a tennis ball and I discovered the inside were Spaldings.
Right.
You know, just like a Spalding, the same rubber kind of consistency.
Yes, the only thing they put the covering on it, but it's basically the same hardness. Yep,
exactly. So yeah, but that was what you raised, Rob, was true. That was the second version of stickball, was to be played either because we played it. Our junior high school, elementary school was shaped like a U, squared off U, and so the center courtyard where we played basketball was also where we would play stickball against the wall with the strike zone box, you know, drawn on one wall, and then you have a pitcher. In fact, it was a game you could play with just two people, because you could throw strikes and the ball would bounce right back to you. You didn't need any, you know.
Exactly. You didn't need a catcher, and you didn't have to go chase it.
And you set up distances for, you know, singles, doubles, triples, that sort of thing. Strikeouts were obviously strikeouts. Yeah,
and then you had stoop ball.
Right.
If you lived in New York, you had there were a lot of homes that had little porches on them. I remember playing stoop ball in Rockaway against the stoop, and it would be dependent on your space. Kids would develop games depending on how much space they had.
Right.
So stoop ball was a way that you could play a little game of baseball by bouncing it off the stoop, and if it gets by you, it's a double, this type of...
Well, you threw the ball against the stoop, and then it bounced back, you know, bounced out.
Right.
That's how we played it. And you tried to hit the stoop on the corner of the step, so that it went further, you know, and
you get it elevated.
Exactly.
If you don't hit it on the corner, you're going to get a ground ball.
That's right.
If you hit it too much, you're going to pop it up.
Yeah,
so
and that would be caught.
Yeah. Who was the best stoop ball player you knew, or stickball player? Let's put it that way.
I don't know, but I'll tell you a quick story about stoop ball. No, that was slap ball, where you played, you know, you pitched it in on a bounce and the batter slapped the ball.
Yes, that's you. We used to call that swacko, I think.
Okay. Well, we just called it slap ball.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, in the summers, when I was still in I guess junior high, seventh grade, somewhere around there. At least one summer, for several summers, and after school ended, the school grounds were used as a sort of summer camp, day camp. You joined for a nickel. You paid your nickel. And that you got a 3x5 index card with your name and address on it, and that gave you the opportunity to take out like ping pong sets, shuffleboard sets, all these. And so one year they had a slapball league, and I remember distinctly. My team actually won. We got movie passes. We won the whole league, and we got free movie passes. It was a nickel. What do you do with a nickel?
Yeah.
Yeah. And it wasn't like it was a poor neighborhood where a nickel really mattered. But for some reason they had to charge you a nickel to join. And I played there a couple of summers like that. And I looked forward to it. It was, a lot of fun.
Did you call the guy who gave out the equipment the Parky?
No, because it wasn't. But I know the name Parky. They wore those green uniforms. They had that stick with a nail in it or some sort of spike to pick up the garbage, and a bag.
Wow, that's a memory. Yes, it was.
Remember, and they had a bag. They put and they also made sure that the kids, didn't screw around in the playground part of the park.
Right.
They'd kick it.
And they would issue the equipment.
That's right. They did. Very much so.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But in the schoolyard, it was somebody. It was either a teacher who was getting, summer pay for this, or some older kid that they hired to run this operation. It was, but that was slapball, as opposed to, what we were talking about, curveball.
Right. We had someone like that who was a paid city employee to kind of go down and supervise the kids in their, teach the little ones games and what have you. And I remember his name was Mr. Dugan. And there was a rumor, or he spread the rumor. He may have had he's a white-haired guy who had, when his hair, he got so old, his hair was yellow. I remember that. Not only white, but it turned yellow. He might have been a blonde before that. But my point was that Mr. Dugan, it was rumored, was a relative. There was a baseball player, Dugan.
I'm sure there was more than one.
in the 40s, I can't think of his
name. Yeah.
But anyway, this guy was supposedly, the rumor was a cousin or a brother of the baseball player.
Uh-huh.
And it's amazing how big celebrity of any kind was to kids. Identifying, like Audie Donovan was from the Bronx. Bess Meyerson was from the Bronx. Didn't have to be an athlete. Someone of prominence from the area. Like Billy Lowe's was from Jackson Heights, the pitcher with the Dodgers.
Yeah, sure.
That was a sense of identity, your area, whatever it was.
I remember we had a couple of kids, two brothers, I believe they were, in my building, and they were New York Giants fans, not football, baseball, New York Giants baseball fans, and word got around that they had invited Whitey Lockman. Remember Whitey Lockman?
Pickles was his nickname.
But yeah, I think it was first baseman for the Giants, and they invited him for lunch.
Carolinian. I don't remember.
Was he? Yeah, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
No. Anyway, they invited him for lunch, and we all gathered around. At the appointed time that he was due to come. I guess what happened was the kids, the brother who invited him, let everybody know that he was going to come. Well, he never showed up. But just because you talk about fame and celebrity, just because we all knew who Whitey Lockman was, we made sure to be standing around the front of the building. Just in case. And we never doubted that he was going to come, but he didn't. But that was one of the big moments on the block was, Whitey Lockman's coming.
Wow. Good.
Anyway, yeah.
Hey, we missed Michael today.
I know. I'm going to call and ream him out.
Just make sure he's okay.
I will, of course. Yeah, I'm sure. I will do that. Yeah, I'm going to call. So anyway, we'll make so we're not going to do. Yeah, it's always a lot of fun. What was I going to say? So not next week, but the following week. Oh, one other quick thing I thought of as I was driving along, I was listening to XM satellite radio. If we were live now, going live, our main competition would be the Pat Boone Show. 12-1 on the East Coast.
Well, we can throw in a little sports. Pat Boone owned an ABL franchise when in Oakland. He was a co-owner of with a guy named Hale, who was a coach and who recruited Rick Barry.
Oh, sure.
Jumped the Warriors and played in the ABL, I think it was called.
The ABA, yeah, you were right. You were the first time, yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, Pat Boone owned a piece of that team.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So we can make anything into sports. That's
yeah. Okay.
All right, David.
Well,
this is
I'm gonna get back. I want to give Mike a call, and we shall see. We'll get him back on the air.
2 weeks from today.
Yep. Okay.
Stay healthy.
You too.
We'll be back then. Thank you for listening, everybody. It's Bronx Roots on the Comfortably Zoned Radio Network. Only got one of the roots today, David Hubler. It's a big root. Thank you, my friend.
Take care. Yeah. Take care.
Well,
bye.
Bye. The proceeding has been a Comfortably Zoned network production. You are advised to keep your dreams wet, your humor dry, your children and grandchildren out of military recruiting offices and off the laps of clerics who wear dresses. Thank you for listening, everyone. Happy trails.